Hello, my friends. We've been having a problem with vermin in the farmhouse this week. I wanted to tell you that story. In the middle of the night, sometime in November, I heard some scratching sound coming from above my bedroom. I thought it was just squirrels running across the roof, but I was very, very wrong. The farmhouse had a very real pest problem. Here's how it's going, and here's how it happened. So, how it's going. We weren't going to try and solve this problem alone. We had a very strong suspicion it was rats because we'd seen some rats in the garage, on occasion, but we also had put some feed in the garage and we weren't 100% sure they were what we were hearing in the ceiling. We weren't so comfortable putting out poison either. If a chicken finds a dead rat or a mouse, its first thought is going to be dinner. So we weren't extremely comfortable with, chemical controls. The first exterminator we called, they came out, they were very professional. They went up into the attic and they found some poop that didn't look like a rat. He was convinced it was something larger and therefore not something he was licensed to deal with. So he referred us to another company that could deal with larger pests. So this other exterminator, he comes out. He looks at the poop and says, well, you definitely have rats in the garage, but I think it might be something else in the attic. Have you ever seen fox squirrels? I said, I didn't think so. I knew we had flying squirrels. I'd seen them in the trees. But the fox squirrel is the largest squirrel in North America. I think I would have noticed it. Since he didn't think it was rats, he put out 2 live traps. And within 48 hours, we'd caught 2 rats. So he put out 2 more traps. And within 24 more hours, we'd caught 4 more. And 2 of them were, to put it technically, huge. So big that they explained the fox squirrel poop. So we had rats. We definitely had rats. In fact, we had Norwegian roof rats. How did we end up with them, and how were they getting into the attic? Well, we'd done enough research before we started the farm to know one simple fact. We were going to have to deal with vermin. If you have poultry, you're going to have rodents. Poultry make a mess, and keeping their food fully away from rodents is almost impossible, especially mice and rats. But we were expecting mice, not rats. We did not expect rats to be our problem. But it turns out that we have this wet, marshy, forested area about 50 feet from our gray coop and only about 100 feet from the garage and house. What we didn't know is that this is ideal rat habitat. Mice, apparently, they like, drier habitats. But all that said, we thought we were doing pretty well with managing the situation. We knew we had some rats around the gray coop, especially with how we use hopper feeders, but we thought if we kept things clean and organized, we could control the situation, especially with the help of our cats. But then we made a rather big mistake. We raised our goslings in the garage last summer. And we thought we were so smart in doing it too. Goslings, they go off heat so much faster than the other birds. And they really need to be out on grass as soon as possible, but, they still need a little bit protection from the elements, and they need protected from predation, especially at night. They're also big and messy. But, the fun thing about goslings is they're really cooperative. So instead of keeping them in a coop, we moved the flock into the garage as soon as they were old enough. Then every day, weather permitting, we would herd them from their pen in the garage out to a pen in the lawn or in the yard somewhere where they could graze. We even made a little school bus out of a wagon for them until they learned the routine. But what we didn't notice during all this was that rats were moving into the garage. They're stealthy and, somewhat inconspicuous, so we thought we were handling things well, but we were not clean enough. And in retrospect, there were warning signs. Our chest freezers seemed to fail unexpectedly, and we saw some evidence of rodents where we were sloppy and spilled some feed. But overall, we didn't think there was a problem. The rats, however, were very quietly, very stealthily taking advantage of our unfinished garage walls. Particularly this north wall, which had, it had insulation, but it was not finished. There was no cover. There was no blocking. And they were hiding in the insulation behind this pile of boxes that we had stacked in a corner. And eventually they found their way tunneling through the insulation up into the attic. From here, we actually made the situation worse this fall by storing some taro and canna tubers in the winter in the garage. Well, it's canna rhizomes, but whatever. The rest found those and had them for lunch and dinner and breakfast and everything in between. So we're still working on getting the situation entirely under control, but we think we've gotten rid of at least most, if not all, of the rats by this point. Our first goal was trapping all the rats we have. We don't want any of them to die in the walls or anything like that and stink up the place. And we've eliminated most of them. There might be a few smart ones still avoiding the traps, though, so we're keeping them out for a few more weeks. Then, once things warm up and it's no longer a snowy expanse outside, we're going to do some preparative work. We're going to install some blocking in those walls. We're going to seal up the gaps where they're getting into the attic. And we will generally create barriers to keep them from getting into the house in the future if rats ever do come into the garage again. All of the insulation will be replaced come spring. And we have learned our lesson. We're adopting a firm policy of never keeping any animal feed in the garage again. And the goslings will find a new home next year. Well, this year. In retrospect, we were lucky. We stopped the problem before rats ever made it into our living spaces. We stopped the problem before any real damage could be done. Otherwise, we'd be in much worse shape. If you still need to, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon, and that'll let you know when our next video comes out. Hint, it's probably next Friday at 3 p.m. And if you've ever had a rodent problem or have any advice for us, please leave me a note in the comments. It's also a great way to keep the channel and encourage the algorithm to show us to other people. Plus, it helps give me the motivation to keep going with these videos. Thanks again for joining me this week. Next week, I'm going to share the story of our house chicken, Prissy. Until next time, keep growing, my friends.